It's September 2000. We're in a courtroom in New York. There's a man standing in the dock, a Chinese man in his late 30s. His name is Tse Chi Lop. The FBI have finally caught him after 6 years of undercover work and international investigations. At this time, North America is being ravaged by heroin. It's been destroying lives and ripping families apart. And this man, Tse Chi Lop, stands accused of being one of the masterminds of the trade. But now that they've got him, he's not what they were expecting. He's got a friendly smile and a modest, easy presence. He dresses neatly, and his jet black hair is parted straight down the middle. Compared to the drug traffickers they're used to dealing with, the FBI agents who've interrogated him in recent months say that he's impressive and different. Tse addresses the court. He pleads guilty to conspiring to traffic heroin into the US, a charge which potentially carries a life sentence. But he asks for leniency. He says he's seen the error of his ways, and that if they go easy on him, he'll leave his life of crime behind him. He'll spend time with his family and open a restaurant. The court takes pity. Tse goes to prison, and 6 years later, he walks free. But then, he disappears. For the next 2 decades, Tse Chi Lop stays completely under the radar. It won't be until 2021 that he'll be arrested once more after a huge international operation. And it'll turn out that opening a restaurant was the last thing on his mind. This is the tale of how an unassuming family man went on to allegedly head up one of Asia's most complex, multi-billion meth cartels. He'll be compared with Pablo Escobar and be known as the El Chapo of Asia. But how could one man hold so much power? And why did it take so long for him to be caught? This is True Crime Reports, a global crime show from Al Jazeera. Today's episode, the Meth King of Asia. Let's go back a few decades. Not much is known about Tse Chi Lop's life before the 90s. We know that he was born in the early 1960s in southern China, in a city called Guangzhou. Growing up in Mao's China, Tse allegedly became involved with a criminal gang known as the Big Circle Boys. The Big Circle Boys began in Chinese prison camps amidst the Cultural Revolution. And to start with, they dabbled mainly in robbery.
This group began to get involved in credit card fraud. It actually became a really big business for them.
This is Tom Allard, an investigative journalist who specialises in Asia-Pacific organised crime, political and military corruption, and financial fraud. He's done some of the most extensive reporting on Tse Chi Lop's career.
But then they used the sort of profits from the credit card business to kind of expand into drug trafficking. So by the early 90s, Tse Chi Lop, he was a major player.
By the 1990s, Tse had moved away from China and had worked his way up the ranks in the Big Circle Boys. He lived briefly in Hong Kong. At some point, he met his wife, and then in 1988, when Tse was just 24, they'd moved to Canada. Tse became a Canadian citizen, and throughout the 90s, he reportedly headed up the Big Circle Boys' most profitable wing, heroin.
It was cheap, there was a lot of it, it was highly pure, and a lot of people were dying of overdoses. There was a real crisis going on in the US with heroin, and a lot of it was coming from the Golden Triangle, the majority of it. And Tse Chi Lop was a key figure in that, police say. But
by the late 90s, authorities had caught up with Tse. The FBI tracked him down in Hong Kong and extradited him to New York. Years later, the FBI agents who met and interviewed Tse will say how surprised they were by his air of calm and friendliness. He wasn't flashy like the drug lords they were used to dealing with.
Thể hiện một cái phong thái của một ông trùm, cũng không hẳn là đao to búa lớn. Thế nhưng cái cách tiếp cận, cách chia sẻ rất bình tĩnh và cái cách biết thuyết phục.
This is Dr. Hai Luong. He's a researcher in criminology and an expert in Asian organized crime.
Tất nhiên thì ở góc độ hiện nay thì tất cả chỉ có kể cả ngay những người thực thi pháp luật khi tiếp xúc cũng như theo dõi Tse Chi Lop đều ghi nhận một điều, đây là một ông trùm rất là kín tiếng, lời ăn tiếng nói rất kín kẽ.
Standing before the New York judge at the end of the year 2000, Tse pleads guilty to conspiracy to smuggle heroin into the US and asks for leniency. His wife puts in a plea, saying their family is struggling. She says the language barrier is a problem, and her husband has found it hard to find work. They have a son with a lung condition, and Tse's parents are ill. As we've already heard, the court takes pity on Tse. Instead of a life sentence, he's given 9 years. Tse's taken to a low-security prison in Ohio. And this is where his quiet, humble persona will make an even bigger impression on those around him. One of Tse's fellow inmates will later say, Tse always had a big smile. While other drug dealers wanted to make themselves known, Tse kept a low profile. It will later be reported that, far from reforming, Tse actually uses his time in prison to deepen his criminal connections. Hai, the organised crime expert, says that one of the most notable alliances Tse makes in prison is a Chinese-British dual national called Chung Chak Lee.
Thì có thể nói rằng một trong những cái cánh tay phải, Chi Chung Chak là người mà giới cảnh sát của liên bang Australia, AFP, đấy, được liệt danh vào một trong 19 đối tượng cần phải truy nã gắt gao nhất toàn cầu, và cũng là đối tượng được đánh giá là thứ hai, chỉ đứng sau Tse Chi Lop, thì cũng là được kết nối và được gặp gỡ và chia sẻ với Tse Chi Lop trong cái giai đoạn.
6 years later, in 2006, Tse leaves prison in Ohio. He was supposed to have spent the next few years under supervised release in Canada. But from here, he sort of disappears. For the next decade, what Tse gets up to and where he goes will be a complete unknown. Only those in his immediate circle know who he is and the power he yields. This is what we now know. Tse and his family left Canada and by 2011 have registered an investment group company in Hong Kong. This is where the police will later say he teams up with his prison buddy Chung Chak Lee, and together they form a criminal syndicate. To its members, it's known simply as the company. In years to come, police will call it Sam Gor. In Cantonese, that means brother number 3. Brother number 3 is the nickname the group's members give to their leader, Tse Chi Lop. Now, Hai, the organised crime expert, says that one of Tse's greatest skills was his ability to unify. Tse formed Sam Gor by bringing together lots of different, previously warring criminal triads. 3 of them had been known to be the biggest triads operating in Hong Kong and Macau, known as 14K, Wo Xing Wo, and Sun Yi On. The other 2 are the Bamboo Union, Taiwan's largest triad, and the Big Circle Boys, Tse's old friends from his teenage years. Deep rivalries had existed between these gangs for decades, but reports will later say that Tse somehow persuades them to put their differences aside and join forces.
Nhuận, phi lợi nhuận Đấy, đối với các cái hoạt động buôn lậu ma túy xuyên quốc gia, xuyên quốc tế này. Đấy, để tránh những cái tranh giành lãnh thổ. Điều này cũng khác biệt khi chúng ta so sánh giữa Hội Tam Hoàng và các băng đảng cartel ở Mexico hay là Colombia thì thường là sử dụng vũ lực để tranh giành các lãnh địa khác nhau. Thế nhưng ngược lại, ở góc độ của Sam Gor, dưới sự lãnh đạo, dưới sự chỉ đạo của Tse Chi Lop thì đã biết kết hợp và biết chia sẻ các cái quyền lực lẫn nhau và đã biết chia sẻ các địa bàn, đặc biệt là ở khu vực Đông Nam Á và khu vực Trung Quốc đại lục cũng như là khu vực Macau hay Hồng Kông.
So Sam Gor sets up operations and starts to smuggle drugs, ketamine, heroin, but mainly crystal meth. Crystal meth is a powerful, highly addictive synthetic drug. It can be produced in much higher quantities and more cheaply than heroin, and it's far less detectable, so it's safer to transport illegally. And this will be Sam Gor and Tse's golden ticket. Labs pop up in Myanmar, in an eastern state called Shan. This borders China and has been run by local militia groups for decades. The lab starts churning out the world's purest crystal meth. One batch can weigh up to 30 tons. There's a super lab called Archan, which is alleged to churn out the biggest quantities. The meth is then smuggled across the borders, either by land, often concealed in packets of tea, or carried in rucksacks by paid-off locals along narrow jungle paths. Another way of smuggling drugs is by sea. Small fishing trawlers carry the drugs out to larger motherships that float out at sea and rarely dock. One of these motherships is called Shunderman 66. From there, the motherships transport the meth to over 15 countries, including Japan, New Zealand, and Australia. Hai says that Sam Gor relied hugely on corrupt law enforcement and bribery of border officials.
Thì như ban đầu tôi có nói thì một trong những cái điểm rất rõ nét trong phương thức thủ đoạn của Tse Chi Lop và cái tổ chức Sam Gor này là dùng rất nhiều tiền để mua chuộc các cái cơ quan thực thi pháp luật cũng như các cái để làm sao mà vượt qua được cái bức tường lửa của cơ quan thực thi pháp luật. Đấy. Và chính vì điều đó cũng làm gây ra những cái khó khăn nhất định trong quá trình mà truy bắt cũng như hợp tác đấu tranh và tiêu diệt cái băng đảng của Tse Chi Lop.
Tse is said to have developed a curious business model. His syndicate, Sam Gor, promises free replacements if a shipment goes missing or gets intercepted by police. Perhaps even more startling is how creative Sam Gor gets with the product. As the years go by, the syndicate realises that the authorities aren't just looking out for shipments of meth, but also for the key ingredients that are used to make meth, known as precursors. So this is what they start to do. They start to produce and ship not just the precursors, but the pre-precursors, the ingredients that make the ingredients of meth. By themselves, they're not that suspicious. Some of them are used in pharmaceuticals. Producing these pre-precursors is highly complex chemistry, and reports suggest that Sam Gor may have employed world-class chemists to do it for them. Hai says this made the drugs infinitely more difficult to detect.
Chính vì thế cái hệ lụy kéo theo một con số rất là khủng khiếp. Ví dụ tôi lấy ví dụ như ở Việt Nam thì khi nào cũng vậy. Tổng kết hàng năm thì phải trên dưới hơn 200.000 người là sử dụng và rơi vào tình trạng lệ thuộc về các chất ma túy. Ở Úc cũng vậy. Cũng rất nhiều người trẻ, đặc biệt là giới trẻ, là nạn nhân của các cái loại thuốc lắc, meth sử dụng tràn lan và không kiểm soát nổi.
In years to come, Sam Gor's supply chain will be so complex, it will be compared with the American tech company Apple, which itself involves thousands of suppliers and partners worldwide. Soon, Tse is overseeing an incredibly wealthy, disciplined, and sophisticated operation.
Mà cơ quan của văn phòng phòng chống tội phạm và ma túy của Liên Hợp Quốc UNODC, người ta cũng đánh giá có thể là cái lượng buôn lậu về ma túy xuyên quốc gia dưới bàn tay của Tse Chi Lop và cái tổ chức Gamso thì có thể đạt đến cái dao động từ 8 đến 17 tỷ một năm. Chỉ riêng một năm 2018 thôi thì con số doanh thu ước tính là có thể lên tới 17.7 triệu đô la, tỷ đô la của Mỹ.
By 2019, the Asia-Pacific meth market will be 4 times what it was 5 years previously. It's believed that Sam Gor is in charge of up to 70% of that. This massive success seems to have had an effect on Tse. Gone as the modest, neatly dressed man presented to the FBI in the early 2000s. Now, Tse is known for hosting parties for syndicate members where he lavishes them with millions of dollars to gamble for themselves. He flies in private jets, rents private yachts, and stays in plush hotels. He's said to have spent $66 million in one night in a casino in Macau. Tom, the journalist, says that Tse never goes anywhere alone.
Tse Chi Lop, if you saw him, you would think he was a kind of mild-mannered accountant or something like that. But if you looked a little bit closer, particularly if he was going out for an evening or travelling, you'd notice something a bit different about him, because he'd always be surrounded by a sort of phalanx of bodyguards, Thai kickboxers actually, that he brought in to sort of protect him.
Now, during all this, as the orders pile in and Tse gets richer and richer, the authorities have been slowly closing in, especially in Australia, where meth is big business. Tom Allard, the journalist, says that Australia consumes about 10 tons of meth a year, worth $10 billion. And reports suggest that at one point, the syndicate, Sam Gor, was responsible for as much as 70% of the drugs entering the country.
I mean, the reason drug syndicates like Australia so much is we pay top dollar for drugs. You know, where it's a relatively affluent society, so it became big.
However, vast shipments have been attracting unwanted attention, especially because of the free replacement guarantee, which reports say was Tse's idea. It's been a popular add-on with Sam Gor's clients, but police have started tracking shipments. Through the 2010s, the Australian police had managed to intercept some of Sam Gor's heroin and meth deliveries in Melbourne. But when they found out, Sam Gor adapted and changed routes. So the police were always one step behind. Hai says that in criminology, there's something called the balloon effect.
Tức là khi mà lực lượng thực thi pháp luật và các cơ quan tư pháp hình sự đánh mạnh, đánh trúng vào một cái băng ổ nhóm nào đó tại một địa bàn nào đó, ví dụ như đánh mạnh ở Lào chẳng hạn, thì các đối tượng nó sẽ có nhiều phương thức thủ đoạn khác nhau để nó chuyển sang các địa bàn khác, ví dụ như Campuchia, ví dụ như Thái Lan, hoặc nó chuyển sang Việt Nam. Hay nói cách khác, ở cái hiệu ứng quả bóng ấy, thì các cái băng ổ nhóm nó có cái độ linh hoạt.
Tom says that even as the Australian police start to close in on Sam Gor, it would take them much longer to close in on Tse Chi Lop.
You know, he's very nimble in the way he does his business, and he's very well connected. He's well connected with government officials, according to investigators. You know, he claimed to have Macau in his back pocket. It's widely believed that, you know, he had senior people who he was paying money off to, so that helped him get away. And also, he knows the business well. He knows the security protocols to follow to protect yourself. So it worked for a while, but not forever.
Despite their best efforts, the police in Australia and across Southeast Asia can't quite pin Tse down. That is, until 2016 comes around. It's the 15th of November 2016, and we're in Yangon Airport in Myanmar. A young man called Tsai Jung-zi is headed back home to Taiwan. As he walks through the airport, heads start to turn. Tsai's quite noticeable, but not necessarily because of the Jimmy Choo handbag he's got slung over his shoulder, nor the fact he's carrying 2 iPhones, but because he seems agitated. His hands are red and blistered, and he's picking at them. Blistered hands are a sign of handling methamphetamines. Police swarm in and arrest him. They find 80 grams of ketamine strapped to each of his inner thighs, but the real catch is on one of Tsai's phones. Here, they find mounds of information related to the drug trade, as well as videos of torture with an apparent triad-related sign in the background. And going through this catalogue, an Australian police investigator sees a photo of a man he thinks he recognises. It's a photo of Tse Chi Lop. Poring over the man's confiscated phone, Burmese and Australian police can't believe what they found.
The arrest of Tsai Jung-zi was incredibly important to investigators. It really helped them get an understanding of the breadth of this syndicate and its size. Inside those iPhones was an absolute treasure trove of information, and it included a huge number of photos, thousands of phone numbers, addresses, photos of all these drug busts all around the world, maps of trafficking routes. Just a huge amount of information.
The police start to piece the clues together and cross-reference with information they already have on their own databases. And it quickly becomes clear that what they thought was the work of multiple crime groups, because the scale of it was so vast, was actually the work of just one. The police close in. Within a few months, there are 2 huge drug busts in Myanmar. In one of them, police capture 1.1 tons of crystal meth at a jetty in Yangon, headed out to sea. In February 2018, a year and a half since Tsai's capture, police bust the Loy Can super lab in Myanmar. They found enough T-branded packaging inside to hold 10 tons of crystal meth. That same month, the Shundaman 66 mothership, one of the main ships that transports the drugs, is intercepted by the Indonesian army. More than 1 ton of meth is found on board. And over in Thailand, Tse's inner circle begins to fall. Police raid the compound of a man called Su Songkitikul, who they suspect is one of the company's operations chiefs. His compound is surrounded by a moat, and inside, police find a small meth lab, a powerful radio tower with a range of 100 kilometres, and an underground tunnel leading away from the main house. Su isn't found, but police seize property and cash that total $9 million. But where in all of this is Tse? His name is still completely unknown publicly. Australian and Burmese police may have found photos of him on Tsai's phone, but they're still no closer to identifying who he is. But that all changes in October 2019. It turns out that a Reuters journalist has also been following Tse Chi Lop closely. That journalist is Tom Allard.
I was researching this topic for about 18 months, so before we published, I got a tip off that someone called Sam Gor was big in drugs, basically, and then I sort of followed it in Asia. He's a big fish. Over the course of the 18 months, I was able to piece together a pretty good picture of the network.
Tom's article goes live on the 14th of October 2019. It's titled "The Hunt for Asia's El Chapo." This is the first time Tse has been named publicly. The article begins with, "He is Asia's most wanted man." Very quickly, the walls close in. The Australian police launch Operation Kungur and issue an arrest warrant. Led by Australian police, but involving over 20 agencies from around Asia, Europe, and North America, Operation Kungur is reported to be by far the biggest ever international effort against an Asian drug syndicate. Amazingly, Tse evades capture for over a year, but eventually, in January 2021, a year and a half after Tom's article came out, police closed in on Tse in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. He's caught in Schiphol Airport as he tries to board a plane to Canada. Australian police will describe the arrest as one of the most significant in their entire history. Tse, who by now is in his mid-50s, is held in the Netherlands for nearly 2 years, while a lengthy legal battle between the Australians and the Dutch gets underway. Eventually, he's extradited to Australia in December 2022, where he faces charges. Tse's associate from the years he spent in Ohio prison, 66-year-old Chung Chak Lee, was also arrested and extradited to Australia. He's believed to have been one of Tse's right-hand men. And yet, this is where Tse seems to have the last laugh. The man who's been called Asia's El Chapo, Asia's most wanted man, brother number 3, who once spent $66 million in a Macau casino. What does he get done for? He's given a single charge of conspiring to traffic meth between March 2012 and March 2013. Still, the charge carries a potential life sentence. The trial is ongoing. Tse Chi Lop denies the charges against him. He told court judges, "Mass media are calling me a drug kingpin, but that's not true." We reached out to Tse's legal team for comment. They didn't reply. So here's the question. What's next for Sam Gor? With brother number 3 gone, is there still a brother number 1 or 2? Dr. Hai Luong, the expert in Asian organised crime, says that while Tse's arrest sends a message, it's only a temporary victory.
Chỉ là tạm thời thôi. Như một cái voi bạch tuộc ấy, thì các băng đảng, các cái chân rết còn lại của Sam Gor và Tse Chi Lop, tôi tin rằng có thể tại thời điểm này nó đang nằm yên, nó đang chờ thời, hoặc cũng có thể nó đang móc nối ở đâu đó, cũng trong khu vực Đông Nam Á hay ở Úc, và tiếp tục hoạt động.
This was True Crime Reports. We have a lot more ready for you for the rest of the season. But for now, we're going to take a short break and be back with you in June. Thank you for joining us. See you back here on June 1st.